Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Whalen. This is Sports Consiglieres podcast. This is episode number 81. Along with me is the happy belated birthday, Jerry, to 50.
Thank you, Jim.
My friend, my pal, Mike Consigliere, Mr. Jerry Calla. Jerry, a lot of developments this week.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So you want me to start? You want to start? You want to go through the game? How do you want to work this? The Giants.
Well, first, we have to say that as much as I love Amani Toomer being number 81, we have to throw some love toward the Robustelli family.
Good call. Good call. So, yeah, good call. Andy Robustelli. We had Bob Robustelli on. Wrote his book, The Pope of the NFL. So check out the past episodes. But yeah, good call on that. But Giants were up in the fourth quarter. Looked good. Dart got out, and then it was the Monsters of Midway. It was a classic game. You had the snow, you had the wind, you had a Dennis Allen defense, you had a Ben Johnson offense, and I thought they were going to come away with a victory. And Caleb Williams thought otherwise. So it's their 11th straight road loss. Obviously, Dabol finished his Giant career at 20, 40, and 1. 4 games, they were up by double-digit leads in the fourth, and they lost. And I think over the last 5 years, I heard that the Jets have a better record by half a game than the Giants in the last 5 years. And the Jets have been a dumpster fire. So Javon Holland was back. So where do you think the game went wrong? And we'll get into Dabol and we'll get into the starting quarterback. So obviously you watch.
Well, I mean, again, you start out. They had a nice lead going into the fourth quarter, which if you watch this team this year, that should have made you nervous. Really, I mean, you really could break it down. They should be a game over 500, which is not the case. We're 2-8. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you really break down the games that they dropped, I mean, anyway, we'll stick with Chicago. So. He early on he declined the field goal. Later on he took the field goal. Then he got a penalty that would have moved him a half a yard short. He still left the points on the board. Putting all that aside, it was the defense just crumbled. Williams was able to extend plays. They're also very fortunate. The Bears dropped a lot of passes.
Yeah, the interception late, and Oshevsky knocked it out. So yeah, they did drop a lot. He missed a couple. He missed a couple open receivers too, which helped out. It's kept the game.
You knew that that as the quarter went on, you knew the Giants. One start went out, the air was out of the balloon, and you just knew at some point when he was walking off that field that was going to be another Giant coach kind of biting the dust, if you will, in after a game in Chicago. At least we didn't have to listen to him give the Joe Judge statement on why everybody stinks but him, and you just knew that they were going to make a change. I think I don't think it comes as a surprise to Dabol, and I think if you looked at his body language as things were kind of unraveling and unfolding, I mean, I think he knew he was going to meet his demise. It's a bad loss. There's a lot of things that went wrong in this game that have gone on in the previous games where they've squandered leads late. And ultimately, Coach Dabol was 20, 40, and 1. And the ironic thing is the last 3 coaches on the Giants that won Coach of the Year, Brian Dabol, Jim Fossil, and Dan Reeves, they all won Coach of the Year in year 1, and then they were fired. So I thought that was a very interesting tidbit. Now we swing into the interim coach, Mike Kafka, who today made the big announcement where he elevated Winston to quarterback number 2, which all intents purposes looks like he's going to be quarterback 1 this Sunday with Dart in concussion protocol still. So that was the big change. Unfortunately for Giant fans, Shane Bowen is still at the helm of the defense, but I don't fault Kafka for trying to create some sort of buzz. Wilson kind of looked flat. You could make an argument the play calling stunk. I mean, he was in second and long and third and long when he was in there outside of completing a 41-yard screen pass. But obviously, it's just not good football. And I think we put the Chicago game behind us. I think Kafka will get a trial, if you will. I think he will be taken seriously. But the bottom line is this, okay? Now we're going to shift out of Chicago. We're going to get into the fact that the head coach was fired. And in the statement, because there was no press conference, no questions. Matter of fact, Joe Shane is not being made available to the press this week. Their statement says it all. And I think you really have to question the fact that they're letting Joe Shane handle this search. So I think, not that I agree with it, I think what ownership is telling everyone is that there's enough talent on this team, that they should be better. For that point, I don't necessarily disagree with that. But now here's the thing. And I think the way the NFL is constructed, because let's call it what it is, the NFL was really the league that kind of defined and established the term, total control, going back to Parcells. If they want you to cook the meal, they should let you buy the groceries. So let's say going forward, let's say for argument's sake, Mike Tomlin is available. We know Bill Belichick is available. I'm just throwing names out, not in any particular order. John Gruden's available. How many, and let's say, Joe Shane, his staff, ownership, they were like, you know what, let's target somebody who has experience. And, for all intents purposes, Mike Tomlin may be available. So let's use Mike Tomlin. Is Mike Tomlin coming to the Giants to have to report to Joe Shane? And the one thing that the Giants do that I think is starting to irk a lot of fans is that they're just very conservative in a lot of the ways they operate. And the Giants have never, ever, ever budged from the fact that the head coach doesn't report to the GM. That's a fact. Ray Perkins reported to George Young. Bill Parcells reported to George Young. Dan Reeves, okay. Jim Fossil, okay. Ray Hanley. You can't get George Young doesn't get off the hook for that one. You know. And then if you look at the last time, it's almost like when they got rid of Coughlin, right? They had an itch to squeeze Coughlin out because that's what happened. I thought at that time it was a mistake to keep Jerry Reese, who was the GM. They kept him. He was really sold on McAdoo. And since then, it's been a horror where McAdoo, offensive coordinator, never a head coach, failed. First year went to the playoffs basically with Tom Coughlin's team. Was a disaster after that. Benched Eli Manning, killed the streak, although there's a lot of people that I think should be on the hook for that decision that aren't. Then you go, okay, Pat Shurmur, his glowing, won 9 games, 9-23, I think, if I'm correct. Ultimately, Daniel Jones had a great year as a rookie. He's, offensive coordinator, second term. He was the head coach of the Browns. So second shot failed. Then you went a little radical where you didn't go coordinator. You went to Joe Judge. In between, I know you had Steve Spagnuolo as the interim that was with McAdoo. Then you went to Shurmur. And then you went to Joe Judge, who was a special teams guy with New England. And then ultimately you went to Dabol, which I don't think anybody had any reservations about coming in with Shane from Buffalo, Josh Allen, the whole story.
No, it seemed like the right fit.
It seemed like a good fit. Dabol paid his dues. Saban, Belichick, there's a lot of things going on. But like you said, after year one, and I think in a roundabout way, year one hurt him. Nobody was expecting them to win 9 games, and nobody was definitely expecting them to win a road playoff game. And then really since then, they won 9 games. He won 20 after that. So not good enough. It's a bottom line business. You have to win football games. And I think they reached a point where not only were they losing football games, they were giving games away. And now we get to the point of what happens going forward. There's going to be a lot of speculation. I think this is going to be a situation where they bring in a lot of candidates. I think they're going to talk to a lot of people that I think we all hope don't get the job. And, we'll go from there. A lot can happen in these coaching searches. For example, if there's an established coach, i.e. Mike Tomlin, somebody gets fired in the playoff, during the with an early playoff law, you just never know. But what's out there, you hear names, you hear a lot of names, and I think there's nothing really clear or definitive, until really the season starts to come to an end. And I think, you hear Minter, the DC that came into the league with Harbaugh, there's a Hafley with Green Bay. You have those are the two hot coordinators. You got a Kubiak as an OC. And then you have a guy like Kevin Stefanski, who a lot of people are very high on. They think he's kind of run out of room, if you will, in Cleveland. Belichick is there. John Gruden is out there. And the names are endless. My thing is, how many people are coming to it's an attractive job. It's the Giants. It's always the Giants. Now you have a quarterback, and I have to throw the but in there. And everybody was like, oh, this is a great job, which it is. You got Dart. It's attractive. Of course it is. But you have to throw the but in. How many people, unless you're a first-time coach, and are they really going to do that again after they kind of bombed, if you will? The last few choices have been first-time coaches. How many people want to work with Joe Schoen? And I think this coaching, this coaching search will determine that. I do think the Giants are going to talk to Bill Belichick. He loves the Giants. Giant ownership loves him. Where that goes, that remains to be seen.
But
again,
Jerry, do you think that they're ready for that circus with him dating a 24-year-old?
No. Listen to what I'm saying. They're going to talk to him. He loves Mara. He loves Tish, and the feeling is mutual. They would love that reunion. There has to be somebody in there that's an adult, and if it's Joe Schoen, the decision would be, like you said, North Carolina football is a circus because of his girlfriend. Case in point, she's on the sideline, she's here, she's there. That's in North Carolina. Can you imagine her with the New York media? But to stay along that, let's say if you were really interested in a John Gruden, which I don't think they will be. Giants are too conservative.
I think the emails killed Gruden's NFL career.
He's going to come back, though, because, again, I think he paid.
Well, I could see him in
college.
There's rumors that he might be coming back in college, but I mean, a lot of the betting apps are saying McCarthy. So
there's no way they hire Mike McCarthy.
You don't think so? That's what the hot. Yeah. Well, I think they need somebody established. I agree with you that they can't give somebody a first time coach. Look at Ben Johnson at Chicago. I mean, he was established. It seems like he's the right fit. But I mean, as far as the retread names are out there, McCarthy's out there, Peterson's out
there.
They're
not hiring Jimmy. They're not going to hire Mike McCarthy. People forget Mike McCarthy interviewed the last time, and that didn't go well.
Okay.
People forget that. The Giants interviewed Mike McCarthy. I know it's a nice name. He has a lot of regular season success. Again, I just don't see that happening. He interviewed with Joe Schoen the last time. Okay. And nothing really matriculated out of that. And ultimately, that is a huge, you would need a cane and a top hat to really do a tap to really sell that to your fan base. That would not go over well.
I think you need an offensive-minded coach because you have Dart, and I think you need a good defensive coordinator. So, but there's a couple names out there. I'll throw out a couple names. What do you think? Bill O'Brien.
No.
Okay. What about Jeff Fisher? Won a national championship, won a Super Bowl with the Bears Went to Super Bowl as a coach.
You mean Jeff Fisher, the Titans Rams? That Jeff Fisher?
Correct. Yes. 67
Definitely
years
not.
old. He's with.
Definitely not.
Okay.
His last job was a disaster. He proved that. Go ahead. Next.
Oh, he's in the AFL or the
Yeah.
Arena Football League. He's involved
Mhm.
with that. So college, I know you poo-pooed Lane Kiffin when I brought him up. You think he's still a viable candidate?
I think he removes himself from even being a candidate. I don't think he wants any part of the NFL.
What about the Indiana University coach?
No, he's not coming here.
Okay. So Kingsbury, we talked about. He had a shot out in Arizona.
I think he gets an interview.
Arthur Smith, offensive mind. No, was a head coach. Munkin's out there. His name was being brought up from Baltimore.
Now, here's the thing. I'm gonna go crazy. Okay, right now, you named Arthur Smith. You know, there's a lot of Arthur Smith reminds me, right? He's in the same category family as Dabol. I think the Giants have reached a point where they need to be held accountable, to have somebody come in to hold them accountable. Okay. They need somebody to come in, get in players' faces. Okay. Kind of an old school approach. There is one guy out there, okay, that I think fits the bill, okay, would be ideal, has head coaching experience. The problem is, okay, he's involved in litigation against the team, which is Brian Flores.
Well, listen, I think Flores is a Belichick guy, Brooklyn kid. He got caught up with the whole Miami thing, and I think that he did his penance. He's up in Minnesota with defense. I think he deserves a shot somewhere. I think he's a good coach. I'm thinking more offense. You got
If you
obviously
if you if you go into if they go into this coaching search doing that, you're doing a disservice to the organization. I don't think you come out and make a blatant statement because you have a quarterback, right? Bill Belichick is the winningest coach in football. He's a defensive-minded coach. You get the right offensive coordinator, right? Tom Brady did very well with Billy O'Brien and Josh McDaniel. They need a culture-changing coach, right? Somebody that gives them credibility on day one. Who's perfect for this job? And I know people are going to argue with this, is Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin gives you instant credibility.
There's rumors that Mike Tomlin signed an extension out in Pittsburgh, and I know
I
he gives
heard
you
the
extra
opposite.
Yeah,
I heard the
well,
opposite. I heard his time is coming to the end.
well, they might win a division. You know, as crazy as it sounds. I mean,
Mike Tomlin always seems to win the division and make the playoffs. That's the issue. And I think what he does, what a lot of people don't appreciate, is he gets the most out of his roster. I'm just using Mike Tomlin as an example,
yeah.
Brian Flores as an example, because they need somebody to come in. I think there is the culture in the Giants is fractured, right? If you believe what's being out there, they have defensive players being aloof in meetings. There's a lot of things that need to be corrected. Okay, I think you need a very strong personality. You need a leader of men, somebody that's going to hold everybody in the organization accountable. I don't think that was Brian Dabol. All right, do I think Brian Dabol is a good coach? I think he has a very good offensive mind. At the end of the day, Brian Dabol was 20, 40, and 1, period. All right. Brian Flores, right, was basically fired from his first head coaching job because he was saying what everybody was thinking is he felt that Tua was a little soft. And at that time, people were thinking that he was the only one that actually said that to him. And that's how that unraveled. Okay, and I think maybe most Dolphin fans might want him back, obviously with the exception of Sunday's win. But based on what current events are going on in Miami.
All right. Well, I put my aluminum foil hat on Monday. What do you think about this scenario? In life, you always build relationships, right? You build professional relationships.
Yeah.
You have um, Buffalo. You have Allentown up in Buffalo. If they don't make it to the Super Bowl, could you see Buffalo parting ways with McDermott and the
Yeah,
Giants hiring them?
I would say he would almost automatically, right? The day it happened, if that did happen, the day when it happens, he goes to the top of the list.
Well, because I could see the fan base there getting itchy with Jared Allen.
Josh Allen.
No, sorry, Josh Allen. Sorry, Jared Allen. Josh Allen, my mistake. I can see the fan base getting itchy with him. They don't fire him. They just part ways like the congeniality do. And he comes to the Giants. Dabol gets hired as OC. They elevate Brady as the head coach. Could you see that possibly happening?
Yeah, if Sean McDermott is whatever, fired, let out of his deal, mutually whatever, parted ways, I think he becomes a strong candidate for the Giants. I do. I
Okay.
agree with that. And I think to be honest, now that you brought that up, I think there are a lot of problems in Buffalo. They're 2-3. There's a lot of things going on. And, if you would have told me in August that the Patriots would be leading the division, I would have lost a lot of money. So, yeah, like that goes to the earlier scenario I said, Jimmy, where established coach craps the bed in the playoffs and then
But
gets fired.
the only problem the only problem
Go
with
ahead.
that is that you have to wait to see. They're
Yeah,
not, they're going to make the playoffs. Depends how deep they go in the playoffs. You're going to wait and
right.
see. So in the meantime, you're waiting at the altar, and all these other candidates are getting scooped up. Another name I failed to mention was Riverboat Ron Rivera. No,
Definitely not.
all right. So do you think
I
the
think what's going to happen is I think they're going to touch base right now. Okay, barring a Tomlin, McDermott, right? They'll touch base where they'll identify the hot coordinators and the guys that so far that the names you keep hearing are the defensive coordinator from the Packers, Halfley, and Minter from the
yeah?
Chargers.
Well,
Okay.
Halfley Schrager put it out there because he's a Jersey guy.
Right, but I
Oh,
think if you look at which I find intriguing, why those names, besides the success that they're having, those two individuals are known for holding players accountable, being fiery, and I just think that's what they're looking for after this. I mean, that typically happens after a coaching change. I mean, if you were, a coach gets fired, the Giants fire Ray Hanley, right? They need an immediate professional. They need somebody to bring everybody to be back to becoming an adult. They go with Dan Reeves. Okay, Dan Reeves, okay, his time runs out with the Giants. Then they say, you know what? We got to go for the hot coordinator, offensive minded guy. Offense was kind of struggling. They go Fossil. Fossil's time comes to an end. They said that he started to run things kind of like a country club. They go with the complete opposite, which is Coughlin. Again, Coughlin's
yeah,
time runs out. They go McAdoo, offensive guy. They go from McAdoo. They go to Shermer. Oh, he had a head coaching experience before, and then they went to Joe Judge. They thought he was the out of the box candidate, and then they went for the hot coordinator. So I think what you're going to see is they're gonna interview, the quote unquote hot coordinators. I think that's a given. I think the only curveball in the whole thing would be if McDermott becomes available, if Tomlin becomes available. That's what
yeah,
I see. The Brian Flores option has traction out there. People have said that have been around him, but it's a big but. Giants are one of the teams that he has litigation against.
Well, I mean, he also could
It's
drop the law,
complicated.
but he could drop the lawsuit. I mean, if he drops the lawsuit, and they offer him a job to drop the lawsuit, then
Yeah, he hasn't
that
done that yet, though.
yeah. Well,
You know.
yeah, but if you look at the records, 2011 they were 9-7. They were in first place, won a Super Bowl. Then 2012 9-7, missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker. 2013 7-9, didn't make the playoffs. 2014 6-10, 15 6-10, 2016 11-5. They lost in a wild card to the Packers. 2017 3-13, 2018 5-11. They were fourth in division. Started the Pat Shermer era. 2019 4-12. 2020 was Joe Judge, and then 2021 4-13, 2022 9-7-1, 6-11, and 3-13. So that's where we are. And then I think they got to get this right, because I think that you're really starting to lose the fan base. And I'm just suspecting that they're holding off on Dart, seeing if he can play, because you look at that San Francisco game, a lot of season ticket holders are going to sell their tickets if Dart's not playing, and they're not going to see bad football, especially in
Yeah.
type of weather.
And again, what do you think you're going to see this Sunday? You're going to see Packer fans.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I don't know. And another name, I know you like the guy, Carl Banks. He said, "My Patricia." He was a Belichick guy. He's currently the Ohio State defensive coordinator. He put that out.
Again, that he's coming off a rough go with the Lions. Now,
Yeah,
again, you have experience there. You have a lot of experience. That becomes dangerous, if you will, because you're hoping he gets the second one right, and that always doesn't happen.
yeah,
They're few and far between. Belichick, obviously after Cleveland, he learned a lot, went to New England. Todd Bowles left the Jets, has had success with Tampa Bay. It's not always that second job, especially after that first one wasn't
yeah,
too successful. A lot of people, the recycledness, Patricia's an interesting candidate. I'll say that.
yeah. I mean, but he really hasn't done anything. You know,
No, I mean his
yeah,
his his
I mean,
Lions tenure was a disaster.
yeah, and then Campbell came in, and then they were 1-15. So I don't know if he didn't have the players or whatever else, but there was a rumor going around that Dabol was going to get fired after the Denver game. Now, it was reported that Mara didn't make the trip out to Denver. He was receiving cancer treatments. What do you think the smoking gun was with Dabol, and how come Shane Bowen still has a job? Is it because they didn't want to elevate Marquand Manuel to DC? They really had nobody else in the locker room they trusted, so they're going to ride Shane Bowen out. Well, first, what do you think happened with the smoking gun? Why Dable got fired, and then how
Well, I
come
think
Shane?
you reached the point where it was clear that this was yet another monumental collapse, and it reached the point where he should have been fired long ago, and it's point blank. It's here we go again, and it's happening, and the Giants were not going to wait until the end of the season. Now, the second part of your question, Dable hired Shane Bowen. Dable also really changed a lot of coaches over these last 2 years, various position coaches. The story was that Dable really couldn't pull anybody to become from around the league to become the defensive coordinator, which is why he set his sights on Bowen. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was unwilling to fire him. Maybe it's a part of that is a little stubbornness, but yeah, I mean, that's a big mystery that Dable's gone, and the gentleman that he should have fired a long time ago, which I think I was calling for. I might have been going crazy, I think, after the Cowboy game. that he
Yeah,
should have been fired.
I think you're right. It
So,
sounds
I
about
mean,
right.
that's the ironic part of this is, do you say to yourself, let's not even get into who replaces him, right? But let's say 3-4 weeks ago, Dable fires Shane Bowen and the defense starts to play better. Does Dable still have a job today? It's an interesting question, interesting scenario. But I think Mara, obviously he doesn't go to the road games with his health. Steve Tisch goes. And I just think one interesting aspect of the Bear game was that Steve Tisch was actually in the locker room after the game. And, the term that I heard was he was observing player behavior, the way, things were going on. And, obviously he had a conversation with John Mara, and that led to, Coach Dable's dismissal. So it was long overdue. They reached a point. They couldn't go any further without making a change. And now, we'll see what happens, going forward.
And do you think there's any avenue that Kafka is retained as the head
Yeah, I mean,
coach?
I wouldn't rule that out, and I don't think anybody in the Giants has ruled that out because that would just be utter foolish. What happens if everything gets better? Let's say everything gets better, and how sports is a funny thing. You make these moves, and I think it has one of two effects. It just lifts people up. It gets people maybe to start taking a little bit more accountability of themselves. Hence, play is enhanced. You hope results are there. And then it wouldn't surprise me if it goes the other way, where this thing gets really, really ugly because, you do have the same defensive staff intact. It wouldn't surprise me if this thing got, even uglier.
Yeah, well, I think that some of these players have regressed under Bowen, as far as like Tay Banks had a great rookie year, and regresses. I think some of these players are regressing under the current defense. So, but they did announce that Jameis Winston was going to be elevated to QB2.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your thoughts on Winston and
I think now,
I mean,
go ahead. What was that?
I was gonna say because Wilson just looked, he was running for his life. He didn't look good. I mean,
My
he didn't look.
response, my response to your question is you have nothing to lose. You have a guy that I think is genuinely respected and loved by his teammates. They say Winston, no matter where he's played, has that effect on his teammates. He's a popular locker room guy. You have zero. If Dart is out, you have zero spark. We've seen, no disrespect to Russell Wilson. We've seen him for 3+ games, right? Why not? You're 2-8. Why not? And I think that's the decision, you have to make if you're Mike Kafka, because you're coming in and you have to kind of go off the Dable script. And my response to that is why not? He's liked. He's a known leader for a guy that hasn't played one snap all year. He's very respected in the locker room, players and coaches. Dart speaks of him glowingly on how close they got. At this point, why not?
Yeah,
The Giants are the only team right now in the NFL that have more kickers, okay, than quarterbacks on their roster.
yeah. Well, McAtamey is a international player, so I guess that doesn't bode well
That
against
still
him. But
counts. He's a kicker.
he's a
I
still
don't care
kicker.
if
But
he's from. I don't care
yeah.
if he's from Timbuktu.
All right,
So
but
they signed one. Yes, they signed one
well, I mean,
yesterday, so they have four.
yeah. Well, Winston comes in. He's 36-51 as a starter, and 24,000 yards, 154 TDs, 111 interceptions. So, but he also can run with the ball. He would be a good backup for Dart
Yeah.
going forward.
Hence
So,
why he was signed,
yeah. So,
and he
but
did play well in preseason.
he certainly did. But we'll see with that. But a couple other things going on around the Jets 2-7. Nick Mangold, they ended up winning. They made some trades. Are you surprised that they got rid of Gardner and Quinn Williams?
Not at this point, no.
Yeah,
They're,
Nick
the Jet
Gardner.
the Jets are telling you they're taking this down, as they say, to the studs. They're looking for their quarterback. They're building assets, through the draft, and they have a boatload of cap space.
Yeah, well, that's going to be important. Um, Also, a couple deaths this week. First, Lenny Wilkens,
Yeah.
NBA player. So, any thoughts on Lenny Wilkens? You know,
My memory of Lenny Wilkens was when he took over the Knicks for Don Chaney. The Knicks were out of the playoffs. He took over. Obviously, my early memories as an NBA fan was Lenny Wilkens with the Cavs and the Hawks. Um, but he took over. Then he was with Toronto, but he took over for Don Chaney, the Knicks. He got them to the playoffs with Marbury. They were actually exciting. And the one thing that I'll say about Lenny Wilkens, is people forget because he was successful in Seattle. He was successful, pretty much, wherever he went. I mean, he had teams in the playoffs. And I think people forget he was like the original old school, New York City point guard. I think one of the things I remember when he did come to the Knicks, which was at the end of his career, is which is crazy if you really think about it, but it is what it is, was that he would give if players played quote unquote tougher defense, he would give them more freedom on the offensive end of the floor.
yeah,
And that's interesting because not many people would admit doing that if that was even the case. But that was one of the things I found fascinating because he was, I don't want to say he was a dinosaur, but he was an old school throwback guy,
yeah,
New York City point guard. And for him to kind of have that in his latter years, I thought was interesting on a way for him to connect with the players. So my
yeah,
my memory of him was, I was too young when he was in Seattle, but my memory of him was Atlanta, Cleveland, Atlanta, and obviously as a Knick fan, he kind of brought back some professionalism. After Don Chaney, he was there and he got them into the playoffs, and very good basketball guy. Like I mentioned with Toronto, very good basketball guy, and
yeah.
it's a
And
loss.
always a professional, the true
Always a
professional.
professional, always known as a gentleman,
Yeah, and
kind
also
of like
Michael Ray.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also Michael Ray Richardson. We had him on the podcast. I think you had some work done. You missed that show, but
Yes.
Michael Ray was on the author on his biography set it up. So it's unfortunate he died. He's 7 years old, prostate cancer. Had his problems off the court, but he's always synonymous first player to ever get banned from the NBA during the drug era. But he seemed like he righted himself going to Italy and then got into
Yep.
coaching it, and him and David Stern kind of mend fences, and then he became like an advocate for some of these new players coming in about it. So, but a really great player. My memories of him: Brendan Bernardina, Buck Williams,
Yep.
Mike Jaminski. So, really, really great point guard. Got started off with the Knicks, and then under Red Holtzman, and then Hubie Brown, and he was traded. He said he was traded at halftime. So, check that episode out. And what about yourself? You still playing
Very
Woodridge?
exciting player, by the way.
Yeah, it definitely was. Definitely
Very
was.
exciting player.
Big guard. It was a big
Yeah.
guard. 6'5" handle ball. Went to Montana by via way of Denver. So, what
I
about
think
you? Are you
he's the
still
same. He was the same height as you, right?
6'5"? I think if you
Yeah.
reverse it, if you
Yeah.
reverse it,
Yeah. I thought you were like 6'5". I don't know.
no, no, it's only on camera. So I'm 6'5". So, but but what your season done with soccer? Is that it
We
or
are done. Yes, we are
yeah?
done. We made it a go. We had a very tough first round opponent in the States. We made it a go for a half. And, for that, I'm proud of the kids. Played a lot of young players as the season went on. So, it was a good season. I think I always say this at the end of the season, that's the way to take inventory, accountability of what happened during the season. And, I think the girls responded very, very well. And,
Yeah.
the
I know you
future is
said you
definitely bright.
I know you said you had some injuries, you said the
Yeah,
younger kids.
very
Younger-
difficult. Team the makeup of the team changed dramatically. Which is tough for the girls that got injured. It really is. As a coach, as a dad, as a human being, it's always tough when a high school athlete, their season comes to an end. Unfortunately, we had one young lady that her season came to an end before the season, and then we had several other young ladies that, as the season progressed, their season came to an end. And like I said, it's very tough. You try to stay in their ear, you try to keep them connected as best you can, but mentally it's very tough for them to go through. I always say it's one of those things that they go through that'll make them stronger, and it'll help them later in life. And then as far as the athletics, the athletic component of it, we had a lot of people step up and take advantage of their opportunity, so to speak. So
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, listen, I'm a big
yeah.
proponent of high school sports, and you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it for X's and O's. You're doing it to develop the kids, make sure they have a
Yeah, high
positive
school
experience.
sports is very interesting because I think what's easy to forget as an adult is, and I always have to remind myself of this, is like, I'm thinking soccer, I'm thinking, whatever, and about the next opponent or about whatever, and you forget sometimes that, they get up, they go to school, they have to worry about their grades, they're developing socially, there's a lot going on in that mind. And I think if you start to lose sight of that, yes, athletics is should be an important part of it, but it is there's other things going on in that mind, and sometimes, when you say, oh, so and so is not giving you effort, or so and so looks a little aloof, that's why I always say, no matter what, but particularly with high school athletes today, you really need to build a relationship to try to get the foundation of where they're coming from. Are
Yeah,
there is there a single parent home? Does the player have to work? There's a lot of things going on.
yeah.
That's what
Are they watching the
it makes it
siblings and
challenging, but it also makes it exciting.
yeah. Well, very well said, Jerry. And did you check out the Hurley book at all? Have you picked that up, Danny Hurley's book?
I started to, yes. I
Yeah,
started
I,
to,
I
yes.
picked it up. I finished it in 3 sittings, so very interesting. So
Well,
very
hold on though, you are a known and renowned fast reader. So
not really, but
you are known as almost, I don't want to say a speed reader, but that doesn't surprise me how you
no,
can
but
how you can devour books.
yeah. Well, I think when you're into it, but I thought
Oh,
it was a
listen,
very
he's a
he's a very good read.
charismatic, interesting guy from one of the most interesting families, in basketball, but particularly if you're a North Jersey guy, if you're a New Jersey guy, and especially if you're a Jersey City guy, it's one of the most interesting families. I grew up. I don't want to say they grew up in my neighborhood, but I grew up in their neighborhood, and they were always a big part of the community growing up. When I was growing up.
Yeah, and I think he attributes to a lot of that of who he is, and but it just
Yeah,
seems like
absolutely.
he just seems like he's got a lot of he wants to win at any cost, and I don't know if the
Yeah.
old and I think the most telling chapter was the last chapter. I think he just opens up, but we'll see. It was a great book, but like I can't think he set the bar so high. I mean, he's in his 50s. You realize his journey he had. I mean, basketball journey. You think he's younger than really is, but he definitely had a road to hoe before, and then going
Well,
through financial.
I think what is great about his story is you have a legendary dad, right, who is highly successful,
Mhm.
really brought his high school basketball program before social media, before the internet, brought them into USA Today rankings. And then you had a legendary older brother who is arguably one of the best college basketball players of all time. And now here comes Danny, following if in these footsteps. And again, it's, as a Jersey City guy, but as a basketball fan, and to be honest with you, as a human being, it's so nice to see him, be successful, at pretty much every coaching spot that he's had so far. And now, he's become, a big part of the Big East, being, juicy and
Yeah.
entertaining and
Oh yeah, you
interesting,
got you got
you
him and
know.
Patino. Like he said, it felt right coming back to the Big East. They were
It's
in the
good. It's
yeah,
good.
so
The only problem I
so
have with Danny Hurley, Remember that. Let's not get him let him off the hook here. He's a Bengals fan. Remember that.
Bengals fan, yeah. He
So,
liked what's his name, Esiason and was it Franklin? Who was the running back they had?
well, Pete Franklin, I believe, right?
No, Pete Johnson. Pete Johnson.
Pete
That's
Johnson. Pete Johnson. I'm
so
sorry.
Franklin, I think, was Miami. But
Yeah,
with
I
that
think
being said,
Tony Franklin. I think he's lying to you. I think he was always a big Chris Collinsworth fan.
oh, you think so? But I know he was a Kansas City Kansas City Royals fan because of the Pine Tar game.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah. So, but anyway, with that being said, I think we'll wrap this up. I just want to say thanks to Dave Sturcio. We're going to move some things around. If you're interested in podcasting, you want to rent out a studio, he's the guy to see. He's also having an event on Saturday at Starland Ballroom. No Thanksgiving, his wrestling event this Saturday. Look at Fight Factory Wrestling, and you can get tickets there, information there. Also, if you can't make it, merchandising. But Dave's been very good to us, and if you're interested in wrestling, especially if you want to do something with the kids on a Saturday night, that's a good place to go. But I'll let you take this out, Jerry. Excellent episode, good insight. We'll see where the season goes from here. We're going to keep on reporting it, but that's all I got. So I wanted to take this episode out.
yeah, this is the wind down of episode 81. Andy Robustelli, Amani Tuma, Tom Mullity.
Tom Mullity, yeah.
That. There you go. I'll stop at that.
He
Join us next
there.
time. What was that?
He was there the first game I went to with Tom Mullity, tight end, 81.
That's right. Next up, we will have episode 82, little Mark Ingram action. There you go. But we will also be recapping the Giants-Packers game, which looks like to be the first start of the new quarterback 2, who will be quarterback 1, Jameis Winston. So thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. Great show, Jimmy. Thank you, Dave. And we'll see you soon, everyone. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, Jerry. Take care, Dave.